Laura, are you good?
Yeah.
Oh, you don't need, I'm overthinking that then.
Yeah, it's supposed to just do, I'm supposed to be able to, I think we're live
Okay.
on here now, so.
Oh, blah, 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 blah. Oh. Okay, 5 seconds. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call the meeting to order. This is our first regularly scheduled council meeting for Monday, March the 12th, 2018. We call the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. And at this point, I ask Councillor Rosehart if you have an agenda or a resolution to adopt the agenda for this evening's meeting, please.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hayes, that the agenda is prepared for the council meeting of Monday, March 12th, 2018 be adopted. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rosehart. Council, the agenda had been circulated. Discussion? Call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. Just prior to moving through the agenda, just a couple bits of note of community interest. I'd certainly, on behalf of council, like to recognize the recent award that was bestowed upon both individually and collectively John and Adele Armstrong, as provided by the Governor General of Canada for the Sovereign's Medal for Volunteering on behalf of Her Excellency. And we'd like to recognize that, and we certainly understand the valuable contributions they've made in our community over the number of decades that they've been involved. At this very hour in Toronto, as we've shared here before, a memorial service is being held for Mr. Johnny Cowell, one of Tillsonburg's favorite sons. And I'm pleased that Matt Schultz, a longtime family friend, will be part of the presentation this evening in Scarborough, and making representation on behalf of the town of Tillsonburg and the relationship that Johnny Cowell had with his community. So we thank Matthew for that. And for the members of the public, also just sharing that earlier this evening on this date, council and the community had the opportunity to recognize long service employees here with the corporation, and to through council, and indeed from those members of the community who get to value and benefit from their resources on a daily basis. We once again thank all members of our corporate team, especially those who were being recognized this evening. So thank you very much. I'd also ask at this point, relative to the agenda as circulated and approved, if there's any disclosure of pecuniary interest, general nature thereof, from members of council. And seeing none, Councillor Rosehart, do you have a resolution to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting being March the 1st, 2018?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Hayes, that the minutes of the council meeting of March 1st, 2018 be approved. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor, for chairing that meeting, sir. Discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. At this point in time, we have one delegation and presentation, item 6.1 on our agenda, and it's a pleasure to ask Councillor Stevenson, also a member of the Special Awards Advisory Committee, to come forward and make this special presentation, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome to the council chambers Charlene Marcotte Winkworth. She has been nominated for her significant volunteer contributions throughout our community. I've got a little bio here, so I'll go through the things that are highlighted. Since 1985, Charlene has been a dedicated and long-term volunteer, committing her time to the Tillsonburg Minor Hockey Club as a hockey gamekeeper. And I'm not exactly sure what a gamekeeper is, but I don't think too many people would argue with a lady like grandmother here that would come in. Are you in the penalty box, or are you?
My coach says gatekeeper.
Oh.
I collect money.
Okay, you look after the
Cash.
The cash. Okay. She is responsible for handling game admissions and dealing with people of all ages. Charlene has seen kids grow up playing at the arena, and she now sees them as adults with their own kids, now playing hockey at the arena. Since 2017, she's also taken on the role as gatekeeper for the Tillsonburg Hurricane Senior A hockey team. For 8 years, she volunteered as a customer service rep with the Tillsonburg Salvation Army. She volunteered many days for 8 hours per day at a time. She was also responsible for sorting donations and helping customers find things they needed. Charlene has also volunteered on the Christmas Kettle campaign for the Tillsonburg Salvation Army. Thank you, Charlene, for all that you've done for the community. And I'd like to ask the mayor to come up now. I just got to get on the other side of you, Charlene. You got to get beside you.
Well, Charlene, again, on behalf of Municipal Council and indeed all the residents of the town of Tillsonburg, some of them on a regular basis who have seen this very friendly face, working very hard on behalf of a number of organizations. It's a pleasure to present you with this Tillsonburg Volunteer Award and wish you well and thank you so very much for all you do in our community. So congratulations.
Thank you.
I'd ask Councillor Stevenson if he would make this presentation. We like to share this book because it's a bit of the history of our community, and I think it goes without saying that you are indeed a very important part of the history of our community by all that you've done. So thank you very much. And it gives all of council and our community great pride to present to Charlene Marcotte Winkworth in recognition of your many contributions to the community by the Corporation of the Town of Tillsonburg, and it's signed this the 12th of March 2018. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I'm just going to get a little shot of it here. Oh, we're going to slide to the left.
1, 2, 3, and just one more time, please.
This is the thinning side. I need
Yes,
that.
that's right. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Oh, you don't have to say a speech. You can if you want, say a few words, but you don't have to. Thank you.
Once again, congratulations, Charlene, and thanks for all you do. And like a lot of our volunteers of the month, Charlene is excusing herself to take on her latest project, and now she's got to be somewhere at 6:30 contributing once again back into the community. So thanks again and congratulations. We'll move directly to item 13 on our agenda this evening under departmental reports. First of all, under 13.3, Soma Asia Mission. There's a summary. I'd ask Councillor Hayes if you could read the resolution, and then I believe Mr. Panchow is in attendance to lead us through a presentation.
Moved by Hayes, second by Councillor Rosehart, that council receives report DCS 18-10, Soma Asia Mission Summary for information purposes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayes. Welcome, Mr. Panchow. Lead you or ask you to lead us through this presentation regarding your recent economic development sojourn to Asia.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Certainly, I'm pleased to be here today to tell you a little bit about our trip, which again was done in conjunction with our partner for foreign direct investment, the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance. So that's of course, the agency that we partner with to help bring in foreign investment into Tillsonburg and hopefully create more jobs and investment here. Just give me a second here to get trained on this. There we go. So really the outline for my presentation is the itinerary for our trip. So as you can see here, we spent we went to 3 different places, I guess, or we started with China, went to Japan, and then traveled back to China. As part of the first part of that China mission, that again was with the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance. We did visit the city of Nanjing. We visited our sister city, Hengshui. Soma actually took a little bit of a deviation there and went to another city. And then we also joined the Premier's mission as part of that for about a day and a half. Then we traveled to Japan as well, visited the embassies we typically do, traveled and met with our major Japanese investor in our community, which is THK. That's well known. And then we had a client visit of our own. We traveled to Nagoya. We had a meeting with the consul general there and a reception. And then we had another client visit that was a Soma client, so a lead that Soma had generated. And then we traveled back to China to take part in a mission with the South Central, I'm mixing that up here, SCORE, South Central Ontario Region. And we spent a couple of days doing some work there with those agencies there. So that's what I'm going to go through right now, but that's the outline of our mission. So here with China, so this is actually, sorry, I don't think you can see that quite well, but this is a meeting we had with the city of Nanjing, which is quite a large city. They have ties to this region with some research institutes actually out of the University of Western Ontario and some of their schools as well. So it's actually made sense to visit this city. They signed, when we were there as well, I think the next slide illustrates that. There's actually a signing ceremony between the Nanjing Foreign Affairs Office, which is the NFIC, as you can see there, and SOMA. And really that was about just exploring more opportunities for us to collaborate with them. So between our manufacturing region, as we know, and then of course the city of Nanjing. We also visit our sister cities, Hengshui. So this is the first time I think we visited Hengshui, if I'm correct, since 2007, and the mayor might correct me on that, but I believe they had a delegation here in 2010, but we had not been there in some time, and they had not been here actually in some time. So this here is actually a pretty cool picture. This is actually a new Riverside Park that they had in their city. This is the deputy mayor, Shui, I believe, if I pronounce that right. And she and the mayor, of course, are in front of a statue of Dr. Tilson Harrison, which is our connection to that city. And of course, there's, as you can see, the Annandale house that they've taken and made a replica of in the concrete there, in that statue. So it's quite, and then of course they have the workers, and they have some war scenes kind of tied in that as well, which is of course where Dr. Tilson Harrison became famous. So this is an amazing park, and certainly right in the center of the city, and certainly quite impressive what they are still doing to recognize our connection and Dr. Tilson Harrison as part of their community. This is again, this is actually with President Sue of the hospital, so the Tilson Harrison International Peace Hospital, or Harrison International Peace Hospital, I should say. And then, of course, this is their main reception area. So quite a good sized hospital, very professional, I think, as we saw. This slide here is, I guess, a bit of fun that we had in the evening one day. Apparently there's a lot of basketball lovers on the trip, including the mayor and myself, and the president of the hospital as well, so they were able to arrange a basketball game. We were able to have a little basketball game there. So I coined the term basketball diplomacy. I'm not sure if that works or not, but it certainly was a lot of fun. I won't tell you who won, but the mayor's team did well. This next slide here is actually just a picture after the game. So we had myself in there, of course, and the mayor. And then we had Gabby. You may remember Gabby, this lady here. She visited our city and did an internship with the Tillsonburg Hospital in 2016. She was here for about a month. And so she was still our main contact back there. Our translator is this gentleman here. And then, of course, President Sue, the mayor, Molnar, and then, of course, these were members of this hospital staff that played basketball with us. So, in all, a very, I think it was a productive game. It created relationships. You know, sometimes when things are a little bit more informal, then you make those connections that are real. So. Moving on then to the Premier's mission. So we were able to join this, as I mentioned, for about a day and a half. And this is they actually, during this mission, they announced quite a big investment or collaboration between a lot of Chinese companies and Canadian companies and Southwest Ontario companies. So it was certainly a good opportunity to connect with the mission and to make our presence known. You can see here I just clipped a bit of their press release, but about $800 million in new trade kind of agreements between Chinese companies and Canadian companies. So pretty exciting. Some of the stuff, as you can see right at the bottom again, speaking of that collaboration, Western University out of London, which again is in our region, does have a presence in this as well. So again, there's ties certainly with those post-secondary institutions in our area that we can hope to take advantage of. Moving on to Japan then, so this is our visit to THK Company, which of course has a significant investment in the Tillsonburg area in southwestern Ontario. This is in their, they have a little bit of a showroom there of their products and some pretty impressive products. This here actually is an actually built-in wheelchair in a car that would actually move out of the car, and then you'd be able to get into the car quite easily, but also be able to use it for personal transportation. So it's pretty exciting. This is their new head office here as well. Their specialty tends to be linear systems, so moving things along a line, if you will, using screw-type mechanisms. So again, very impressive technology and something that we're hoping to leverage further. This here is just an invitation just to show you what we partnered with the City of Markham, the Government of Ontario, and the Embassy and the Canadian Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and we had a reception at the Embassy actually one night in Tokyo. It was quite successful. I believe we had the number slipped me. I think, I thought there was about 30 companies there. We actually found there's over 50 companies there, so we made a lot of connections there. This is certainly a picture of it. And we had both a chance to present SOMA, the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance, and then, of course, our partner, the City of Markham, did a presentation as well. So, this is a client that we've had before, and actually they've already visited the Tillsonburg area. They're in the kind of plastics, and they use agricultural feedstock, so leftover stuff from agriculture, from farming, to actually produce plastics and various products. So we even visited their factory and head office in Jutsu City. And they're probably looking to come visit us a little bit later in the year, so we're hopeful that that will result in some investment. As I mentioned, the Consul General, we had a couple of meetings there in Nagoya. Nagoya is significant. You've heard me talk about this before if you've been around this table. I know you have, because Nagoya is really the automotive center for Japan. So Toyota City, if you will, a whole city, I guess, that Toyota, of course, is involved in, just outside of Nagoya, and there's a lot of automotive investment. So when we're talking automotive in Japan, Nagoya is really the key market, and that's where a lot of the investment into Canada's heartland or southwestern Ontario has come from. All right, now moving back to China. So this again was with the South Central Ontario region, and their partner, which is Canada 168, which is looking to facilitate Chinese investment into North America and specifically the SCORE region. So this, you may recognize some of the faces here. Mr. Art Lawson was the face, of course, the gentleman in the middle. He was the face of SCORE for many years now. He's moved on, but still consulting for them on a part-time basis, I guess. Mr. Lee is the proponent, if you will, of Canada 168, and then, of course, Mayor Molnar. So we help facilitate, I think, the mayor and through the provincial offices, a number of meetings for them to help, and that one was actually in tourism, but we had a number of other meetings as well. So all in all, you can see here, so this is the kind of touch points that we had. So about 13 companies were visited. This is overall for the entire SOMA mission. So we have a number of companies I call business retention, visits to companies that already have a presence in the area. Those are the companies that have already made an investment here, and we're encouraging them to do more investment. So about 13 companies were visited. 3 communities had their own individual kind of business attraction clients that they were working with, including the Tillsonburg one that I mentioned earlier. And then the business attraction events, so these are joint events that we had here. So 12 was at one event and 50 at another event. And then we had, through SOMA, about 4 more companies that we actually had individual one-on-one meetings relating to investment. So total of about 82 company connections. So quite significant, I think, for us, and we were certainly pretty happy with the trip. So in summary, I've talked about a number of these already, but you can see certainly the visits with the Consul General in Shanghai, the Export Development Canada, City of Nanjing, Monshan, Canadian Embassy, Consulate General, receptions, and of course our own individual visits, as I mentioned already. Some of the key follow-up items, certainly for the Southwestern Ontario Marketing Alliance, is with respect to the City of Nanjing and exploring and building upon the relationship that has been started with respect to the Memorandum of Understanding. Certainly looking at promoting trade development and then, of course, investment between the two. Certainly in terms of the City of Hengshui, so our sister city, they're looking at potentially visiting, if not this year, in the next little while, maybe in 2019. So I think that was certainly an opportunity, like I said, to rekindle the relationships and to see what we can do in terms of trade investment. My interest, of course, being the economic development guy, is let's see what we can do in terms of the sister city relationship is great, but let's see what that turns into in terms of trade and, of course, investment. So that's my focus. And we've actually, in terms of follow-up, we've actually already hosted one company that is considering investment in this area. They came through, I think, about 2 weeks ago and toured only the SOMA communities. So the reason why that's important is because typically when companies look at Canada, they look at all of Canada, maybe they look at Ontario, and they very rarely get outside the bigger cities. In this particular case here, this client is only looking at SOMA communities because of the relationship we have with both, of course, in Japan and longstanding connections there, but also some of the personal connections within the company. They know that this is a good region to invest into, and this is the only place they're looking. So the nice part about that is, yes, we have to compete, but it's a much smaller pool than perhaps if we were competing with companies across Ontario or Canada. So really, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much. I thank Council for their support over the years, and I certainly, if the Mayor wants to add anything to that, I will certainly take your direction, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think, first of all, let's, the resolution's on the floor. You're available to answer any questions. I think it's important to open up the floor to any questions from members of Council. Councillor Esseltine, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wondered, see if I was reading through some of this stuff, I got an idea there might have been local companies that went on this trip as well. Am I right or wrong there?
Through the mayor to Councillor Esseltine, I think perhaps, yeah, there might have been a bit of misinterpretation there.
Okay.
When I was talking about the local companies, those are the companies that have a presence here that we visited their head offices in Japan
Okay.
or in China.
Okay, so local manufacturers or industries weren't represented on this trip?
That's right.
You
It
would
was-
be representing them? Yeah.
That's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
There were, just for clarification, because I think that's probably where the question was addressed, but as part of the Premier's mission, which was a 2-week economic development trip on behalf of the province of Ontario, and the Premier and her entourage spent a week in China, in four cities, and then over to Vietnam. There were on the Chinese portion of the Premier's trip other local and regional organizations and businesses that were on that, like the ginseng growers, and there were a couple of other local businesses. But that's when you sign up for, you pay a fee. SCORE paid that same fee as other private sector people, and which was supported, and that we ultimately, as a membered partner in SCORE, I would secure that we got value, out of that relationship. Any further, Deputy Mayor, please?
Just from a very high level, just so I'm clear, and probably either one of you can answer this question, that these missions, which I'm not opposed to, because you look at NAFTA, and NAFTA is right up in the air right now with steel, for example, because we snuck under the wire on the weekend with still with our steel arrangements, but China didn't. China's pretty upset about that. And I'm very naive. I'm not knowledgeable of what China does. Do they manufacture steel or do they import steel? I don't know that. So are they... is there a market there that we can manufacture steel and sell to them? But my question is, the direct question here, are we looking that Chinese companies come here, build factories and produce products, hiring our local labor, or are they looking to buy our product and we export them to China? Or both?
Yeah, through the mayor to Councillor, Deputy Mayor Bears, my apologies. Certainly there is, Chinese companies have typically done a fair bit of trade or selling products into North America and Canada especially. What we're seeing now is an increased demand from Chinese companies for value-added goods and services, so high-end services and products. So they are looking to buy stuff from us, in answer to your question, and they're also looking to buy more agricultural feedstock because we're recognized as a good source of that. So certainly where we see, of course, Tillsonburg being positioned is we're right in the middle of that agricultural region. We have a fair bit of agricultural production going on, as you know, but we also have a fair bit of value-added processing of that good. So there's a number of opportunities there for them to buy goods from us. But really, my focus again is on jobs. We have seen Chinese companies invest in and buy companies in North America and increasingly maintain those presences and grow those companies into bigger companies, which results in more jobs. So that's I think the main interest from my perspective. But at the same time, trade has to be there. Trade has to be happening as an underlying kind of condition for growth. So.
Well, I know that a lot of the imports that we do are not necessarily high-end imports.
Right.
Some of the automotive, for example, that come from the Asian countries are not high-end automobiles. They're manufactured locally, they're manufactured in the United States, and they're manufactured in Germany, for example. But I mean, some of the vehicles are the working class vehicle that we're importing. And a lot of them are manufactured here, but the mother companies are Asian companies. So what sort of products are we looking at? Like a dry good farm products, such as, I know we were looking a while at hazelnuts, for example, of expanding or at least growing hazelnuts in southwestern Ontario, which is a prime climate for that sort of thing. Is that the type of thing? Ginseng, are they looking for vegetables? What are they looking for us to process here and send there?
Yeah.
Or is it meat? Are they looking for meat?
I think it's all of the above, to be honest. I mean, there's a fair bit of demand there. It's a growing economy. Certainly when you're looking at feedstocks, I think it's more of the dry goods, so your grains still and certainly your ginseng is a huge one as well. But they're looking at new markets and they're looking at new investment opportunities. So.
Right.
Yeah,
for all of Canada, not just Ontario.
No, for sure, all of Canada.
That's right,
yes.
yeah. Okay, very helpful, thank you.
Further questions or comments? I would say that through all the deliberations and the personal and group contacts that were made, NAFTA was right on the tip of the tongue from our own local investment partners to some of the groups we met with. And you were asked to make your own personal observations, and obviously not in a position to make commitments on a macro kind of economic scale. But I think there was an appreciation that the community was investing in traveling abroad, and did recognize that partnerships that really started maybe 4 and 8 and 10 years ago were now developing to the point where a commitment for investment was being made. And I would suggest, like, as a whole, while tiring, frustrating, and getting sick, and all the other things that come aligned with very intensive travel over a very brief period of time, this particular trip has already paid dividends, and I believe it, more than any of the others, continues to build on, and I would suggest that it will see some valuable outcomes down the road, and some I hope sooner than later. I think what was unique about this is because SCORE was making an investment in travel. The Premier's trip was on, and Council had approved what in essence has been a biannual SOMA investment to Asia. So at Tillsonburg, as a partner in SOMA, as a leader in opportunity, even though the partnerships are financially at a county level in SCORE, and being able to spend a day and a half, with a one-on-one with the Premier, the return on investment, and actually the even return on who was paying for portions of the day-to-day costs, it really was, I think, a very positive experience for the community. So we'll look forward to the work that you have as you set out on your next 10 years.
Thank you.
Mr. Panchow was celebrated as one of those earlier tonight for 10 years here. Any further questions from members of council? Moved by Councillor Hayes, second by Councillor Rosehart, that the report on the SOMA Asia mission summary be received for information purposes. All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. Thanks very much, Mr. Panchow.
Thank you.
Under operational reports this evening, there's a report on the renewal of the sewage system management agreement between the town and the County of Oxford. Councillor Hayes, you have that resolution, please.
Moved by Hayes, second by Councillor Rosehart, that council receives report OPS 18-04, renewal of sewage system management agreement, and that a bylaw authorizing the mayor and clerk to execute the sewage system management agreement with Oxford County Public Health be brought forward for council consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Hayes. Discussion. Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. The tender RFT 2018-06. This was a tender for asphalt paving programs. Deputy Mayor, you have that resolution, please?
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Adam. The council receives the report, Operational Services 1805, results for tender RFT 2018-006, asphalt paving program. And the council awards tender RFT 2018-006 to Five Star Paving of Cambridge, Ontario, at a cost of $365,487.06. That's the net HST included, which was the lowest bid received, satisfying all the tender requirements.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Discussion from council. Councillor Adam, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Mr. DeLebeck. Thank you for the reporting on this, and we see council sees that you got a favorable result. We chatted a bit earlier, perhaps to do with getting the tender out early. My question was in regards to the cost, the surplus now associated with this line item. So it's for the funds from the asphalt resurfacing. It is from provincial gas tax revenues that we receive. And I just wondered, will you be looking to utilize those funds in terms of additional purchase of product to do more areas in town, or what will happen with the leftover money in that budget line item? Will it sit in the appropriate reserve, or?
Through the mayor to Councillor Adam, it is always our intent that we will not need to use more dollars in order to fulfill the current scope of work. To the other end of that, if we do have leftover dollars, it would be our best interest to leverage this favorable pricing to do more areas if we are able to do that.
Right, sorry, through the mayor to Kevin. So, but the way the resolution is written currently, so we won't be utilizing those funds at this time. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Just building on that, confirming that there's a positive variance in the three main items, meaning water maintenance, that's an operating. I assume that's, but that's a separate fund, county fund, like, so that will go into reserves there. Like, they'll all go to their separate reserves rather than what are the overall capital asphalt resurfacing, which is in essence already a reserve fund pulling from the provincial funding. We're just not going to spend it all.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay, that's good. Anything further, members of council? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And supporting what Councillor Adam did. And thank you, Mr. DeLebac, you and your team. There's a couple others here. It's great, getting early pre-budget approval on some of these items, and I think we're seeing the benefit of that now. So, thank you. Deputy Mayor, I'd like to continue with concrete sidewalk and curbing. This is a tender.
I would. It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Adam. The council receives the reports Operational Services 18-06, results for tender RFT 2018-007, concrete sidewalk and curbing. And the council awards the tender RFT 2018-007 to Fortis Concrete Limited of London, Ontario at a cost of $116,464.32, net HST included, which was the lowest bid received, satisfying all tender requirements.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, you've heard the resolution. Once again, this is coming under this projected budget of $125, about $8,500 under budget. Discussion? Deputy Mayor, please.
Just not a question, but just a comment. Both with this tender and the previous ones, all the tender results came in similar. We took the lowest bid, but it gives me a comfort level knowing that they're all in the same range as far as the quality of service is concerned, which is good, because sometimes when a tender result comes in way lower than normal, you have to question it, and all of these people are pretty close. So those are just my comments. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. That concludes the operational services reports for this evening. We'll move on to recreation, culture, and parks. And Councillor Adam, you have a resolution this regarding accessibility components of the trailhead.
I do. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stevenson, that Council receives report RCP 18-09, Enabling Accessibility Fund Agreement, Accessible Trail Connection, and that Council authorizes staff to initiate the construction of a barrier-free connection between the town's 4th to North Rail Trail and the Trans-Canada Trail as an augmentation of the planned work on the extension to the Trans-Canada Trail incorporated into the approved 2018 budget and work plan. And that the project be funded by enabling accessibility grant funding, it's $50,000, and by increasing the use of DC reserves from $18,000 to $31,500, and increasing the use of RCP reserves from $2,000 to $3,500. And that Council authorizes the Mayor and Clerk to sign the Articles of Agreement between the Town and Her Majesty and Right of Canada for the Enabling Accessibility Fund grant of $50,000 from the Government of Canada towards the project, and that a bylaw be brought forward for Council's consideration.
Thank you very much, Councillor Adam. Discussion for members of Council? Primarily, it's a we're confirming an application that we have now been confirmed that we were successful with. This authorizes the acceptance of the terms and conditions with the government for the $50,000 grant and and how we're prepared to pay for the balance of our portion for the accessibility access on the 4th to North Rail Trail and the Trans-Canada Trail inside the community. Questions? Councillor Hayes, please.
Just to comment, a paragraph in the report where it states that there's a report coming forward that the county is agreeable to pay for the rest of the trail to Quartertown Line, so I'm glad to see that part of it. It's be no more cost to the town to finish the rest of that trail.
Further questions? Councillor Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm glad to see this come forward. I'm just wondering, does anybody have an idea how long have we got a plan yet, or next we make a plan of how we're going to do it, then we put out tenders? Is that the next steps through?
I believe the next step, and perhaps Mr. Calder can make comment, but the next step is once we have to make this agreement with Her Majesty the Queen. She'll be happy that we did. And then the budget has been, in essence, established. And then Mr. Cox and his team can go out to tender the project, and knowing what the definable limit is.
Just to add to that, though, there will be a future report coming back to council on April 9th regarding the outcome of the agreement that council, or the county is looking at this week.
Oh.
So it'll come back here first. So hopefully the scope of the project and the cost will be included in that.
Okay. Just a clarification through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Calder. Is this tied in with what the county is doing, or is this just this is ours, right?
This is just ours, but it's all part of the Trans-Canada Trail project that started, a year and a half ago, that the town of Tillsonburg contributed to within the township portion.
Right.
My understanding is there's additional funds available still, and that's what's being used to do this extra piece to the benefit of Tillsonburg proper.
And yeah, are we talking to Quartertown Line piece? Is that where we're talking, or just to here?
Queso east-west.
Queso east-west, the portion through
Quartertown Line.
To Quartertown Line, yes.
Yep. Thank you.
That, for confirmation, that report isn't this week. It's on the, I believe you said that, but the 28th of March. And so it'll get back from there. We'll review whatever. So I think we'll make sure that that information gets circulated when the county distributes it in advance of the 28th. So, the 24th, probably. Anything further to that? We'll call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. Thank you. Staying on trails, a little further south this time, there's a resolution regarding the supply and installation of utility corridor fencing. Councillor Adam, you have that resolution, please?
I do, Mayor. It's been moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Barras, that report RCP 18-10, supply and installation of utility corridor fencing, be received for information, and that Council confirms the position of Tillsonburg's representatives on the Otter Valley Utility Corridor Board of Management endorsing the recommendation to authorize the municipality of Bayham to install utility corridor fencing, and that the town's 50% share of the cost for this work be funded from the royalties collected by the town from the use of the utility corridor.
Thank you, Councillor Adam. Discussion? Councillor Stevenson, please.
Yeah, this corridor, it's the one that runs to Port Burwell from basically outside of, just to the edge of Tillsonburg, as I understand it. Who is requesting fencing? I mean, that's been there a long time, that corridor. Can anybody answer that?
We at that? Okay. Yeah, we'll ask Councillor Hayes or Deputy Mayor. I think you're, is there too? Yeah, go ahead.
There was a request from a landowner south of Stratfordville, Christy Rockley, and because trail, or actually it's not a trail, it's the right-of-way, the railway right-of-way corridor is on the east side of her property, and so the four-wheelers or whatever are riding on that corridor and actually veering off into her property, which is a lot of woodlot. and it was her request that we do something about fencing. So the deputy mayor and myself, we met with the two councilors back in November, I believe, and our suggestion was that we put some fencing at the crossroads, not along the perimeter, because if we at least stop them at the crossroads, we prevent a lot of them from actually heading down the corridor.
Yeah.
So that's what this money is going to be used for, to do some of the crossroads. And the staff down there are going to do the first ones that they feel is the more need for them. Because actually, there's quite a bit of that trail, or right-of-way is actually leased back to the farmers, and they didn't want fencing. And there's only a few kilometers at the very south end, there's actually a designated trail. It's still actually a right-of-way or a power corridor is what it's designated as right now.
Can you comment on that? Who made the decision to lease it back to the farmers?
That's before my time on this council.
Deputy Mayor, a comment?
Yeah, thank you. Through you to Councillor Stevenson. And originally, it was to be, the whole 26 kilometers was to be used for a trail. Some of the farmers were a little concerned with it because of the bush parties and things that were happening, and vandalism to the fields. They were finding debris in their cornfields. This is very early after the agreement was signed, which is going back now 20 years or more. And the councils of the day got together and decided to berm and actually put lateral fencing through certain areas to stop the bush parties from happening in these particular areas, which was cutting off the whole 26-kilometer trail, because they were going to use it for the original intent was from the gas companies to bring a lateral line in, and perhaps water in the future. It's still there. It was still a good purchase, and those easement rights are still there on those properties. It's still owned jointly by the two communities, the two municipalities. But as far as the trails go, no, it was stopped with lateral fencing and with berms being built to discourage people from using it for bush parties in that area. So it comes up a certain distance from the lake well into I believe, I'm not sure where it goes exactly, Jim, if you do. It's somewhere south of Vienna anyway, and that's where it's being used for the trails, and it's actively being used for healthy purposes. But you can't ride your snowmobile all the way from Tillsonburg down there anymore. Could the first year, and that's it.
Follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Sure.
To Deputy Mayor, maybe you can answer this one. Did I hear that the land has been leased back to the farmers? Did I hear that right?
Apparently there's some income there, and I'm not sure what the farmers are giving the lease land, because there's Tillsonburg, I believe, gets $11,000 a year from this. Now the cost of this project is $18,000, so the 11 that we get, 9 of that will be our expense, but we're getting 11 to offset it.
Yeah.
So rather than put the entire 11 into a reserve, we're suggesting the council spends the 9, puts the balance into the reserve. But the funds, I believe there's some easement funds that are still coming in from one of the petroleum companies, if I'm not mistaken. We'd have to check the records to find that out. I think Mr. Rush would have.
Mr. Calder, can you shed some light on this, please?
Just specifically to Councillor Stevenson's question about leases, it's my understanding that there are legal agreements in place that do lease portions of the trail back to abutting property owners, mostly farmers. Those leases have been in place for many years and went through a process that we can't determine actually went through the joint board. They were entered into prior to any ability for the joint board to have, I think, a say in what those leases would look like. But they're legal, they're in place, they're signed by the parties of the day.
I'd be interested in seeing that, to see who signed that. Thank you.
Well, just the only thing is those are all council decisions. They're only made with the support of two partners, one being Bayham and one being the town of Tillsonburg. And both parties have to agree to that. That's all.
I'd like to see it. I don't remember.
Okay, and Deputy Mayor, please.
Just want to add to that, there were more than two partners, because the municipality of Bayham was created by actually 3 municipalities. At that time, they had, Port Burwell had a council, Vienna had a council, and the rest of Bayham Township. Then they became the municipality of Bayham. One of the 3 signed the original documents. Bayham inherited that, and us as a partner took them on as a partner with that inheritance covenant built in, and that's what happened there. So we're not sure where it was. I think that's how it got somewhere tossed on the wayside. So Bayham may have that in the archives in the basement somewhere as to who signed it, but it was one of those township people prior to Bayham becoming a municipality of Bayham.
Okay, now I think if there's a need to get some background information, I think that's appropriate. Because I've heard 3 different stories, and I could add what I believe actually is accurate, but that's not addressing the resolution on the floor. Because this really goes back to the utility corridor and trail, which is intended to be a trail, but actually got the benefit of being a utility corridor. And that's what brings the wind-powered energy back to the distribution station in here. And that's where those funds ultimately are coming from. That's AIM Power Gen and their new reincarnation. Those are the funds of the funds that we're sharing on a 50% basis with the Township of Bayham on an annualized basis. Then there are some lease agreements and other things. What I think really needs it, this is, I would suggest, is the appropriate resolution for this particular request dealing with the Line Fences Act. That's what this is. It's about someone is demanding this, and the province of Ontario, through the Line Fences Act, said if they have moderate reason that, that by their, being challenged on the use adjacent to their property and that a fence would abate that concern, then the landowner, meaning the town and Bayham in this case, have to supply that. The exact same reasoning behind the county Trans-Canada Trails, even though we contributed to them, the county is paying 100% of any Line Fencing Act fencing along the Trans-Canada Trail outside of the community, which is very important. And I think we realized that and fought for that, in that partnership in advance. So my only comment is I'm supportive of this, but I'm suggesting either the historical questions are appropriate, and also you can't go down this path one after one after one after one, or what's the value of having, at some point, trails, which are the reason that was there, produce that connectivity. And when they become disjointed, either through lease, through fencing, through barrier of another kind, you no longer have the trail. And that's physically where it is now. So if you can't get from here to here, and why are you paying for a fence further down where you can't even get to that from somewhere else along the common shared line? So I would encourage us somewhere down the line that's probably a bigger part of the conversation. So the resolution's on the floor. There be any further additional questions? Councillor Adam, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to either of the members of the Otter Valley Utility Corridor Board of Management. So we have this in front of us today, and I just wondered, I was trying to get information from both Deputy Mayors and Councillor Hayes just regarding, I heard a bit of different information, but ultimately I don't have a map or document in front of me. But did either of you anticipate any other claims or requests for fencing coming forward from other abutting property owners in the future? Like, is this a problem that could, or something that could keep popping up?
Did you have comment on that? I think I was kind of what I was just suggesting, but you go ahead.
At our discussion, we have X number of dollars allotted right now, and actually, if you look at the costing, the fence is $4.25 a foot, $800 for the gate, and the average crossing is maybe 100 feet or so. So that amount of money that we've allotted will do quite a few crossings, and it was left with the discretion of Bayham staff to do the first 2 or 3 that we actually talked about that have problems, and then as other ones come arise, we will have a meeting further discuss that, where we should put more up.
Okay, further, Councillor Esseltine, please.
you, Mr. Mayor. So through you to Councillor Hayes then. So it's not just the one crossing that with the person's name is named in the report here, but there's more crossings that are being done at this time?
Yes, according to staff, they're going to do more where they are having some problems. But to start with, they're going to do this one where the complainant lives. There's actually be two crossing, like two fences to put up right at the east side of her property, so.
And others as well then
And
this
others
year?
as well.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions or comments? I thought we were doing one, and if it comes in under 9, we're covered, but we've maxed out at 9. I have a bit of trepidation giving unilateral direction to a different, even though it's a membered municipality, to spend our dollars without getting a say in it. Is that what's potentially going to happen? I'm sorry to put the two members on, but on the other hand, I'm prepared to accept your recommendations because I believe that's what's on the floor tonight. I'm just trying to understand.
Well, I guess
Excuse me.
if I may, there's an up limit for our town
9.
of $9,000. But as I just explained, if you look at the pricing that came in, an average crossing, say, is maybe 100 feet or whatever. At 4 1/4 is 400, plus the gate's 1,200, maybe 1,500, less than $2,000. And so they'll be able to do quite a few. And I would surely think that, you know, that we'll still have some money left over. And I say we left it with the discretion of the Works Department in Bayham to decide which ones they should do first.
Okay. Well, I think the only qualifying benefit to that is the fact that Bayham has to also spend 50%. So, I mean, they're not going to spend frivolously, but I would much rather, you know, these are applicants. When someone has a request under the Line Fences Act, they actually have to make written summation. They have to give a qualification, and not all requests are valid. You know, there are some frivolous Line Fences Act requests. And but I do trust in the partnership that that's taken care of. So I'm satisfied with that. But my comments stand regarding the future, though, I think. So. Any further questions or comments? I'd like to thank the members of the committee for their diligence on this as well. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The resolution is carried. Thank you. We move past unfinished business, staff information reports. Councillor Esseltine, we have a series of committee minutes from Heritage Beautification and Culture, the Cultural Advisory, and Cemetery, Cultural Advisory, and the Museum.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stevenson, that Council receives the Heritage Beautification and Cemetery Advisory Committee minutes dated February 1st, 2018, the Cultural Advisory Committee minutes dated February 7th, 2018, and the Museum Advisory Committee minutes dated February 22nd as information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Esseltine. Discussion on those minutes from any members present? Again, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? The resolution is carried. And Councillor Esseltine, similarly, a resolution regarding the minutes of the LPRCA of February the 7th, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Stevenson, that Council receives the Long Point Region Conservation Authority minutes dated February 7th, 2018 as information.
Thank you very much, Councillor Esseltine. Discussion for members of council regarding the LPRCA minutes. Just confirming, and the AGM was held recently. I recognize the work of the Deputy Mayor in that, and his position there, representing the County of Oxford in that, deputation from Tillsonburg, and all the members present that day. It was a good day. Call that question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution's carried. Notice of motions. We have one notice of motion as previously circulated, 17.1 on the agenda. Councillor Adam, please.
So, Mayor, I'll just draw council's attention to, it's included in the agenda, but just draw council's attention to, I'll be changing the date of the request for staff report to March 26th, the next council meeting. Previously read March 1st, which is in the past. But it's been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, that a staff report be prepared for the council meeting of Monday, March 26, 2018, regarding governance options for the CT Pilot Project Steering Committee.
Oh, good.
Moving
I'm adding the time in my head. I apologize, Councillor.
Moving forward after the March 31st, 2018 deadline, and that multiple options be presented to Town Council, including but not limited to being elevated to official town status, becoming an advisory committee, and creating a transportation board. And further, that increased participation amongst community members and organizations be promoted and pursued in order to help support and guide the potential transformation of public transit in town.
Excellent. Did you want to continue with the presentation?
Can you find the date? Yes, through you, Mayor, to the rest of council. So we have a number of things going on. We've had in regards to transportation, we've had TGO come before us, and council has accepted or agreed to look at different operational formats, and also with some opportunities for funding, provincial funding or federal provincial funding upon us, and the potential for that service to get expanded out and potentially grab some more partners. I think it needs some more guidance of community experts, and I think increased membership and participation for that committee would be a good thing, and just to allow council to have a little bit more information or looking at it a bit more.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Adam. Very consistent, and thank you for your presentation. Discussion from members of council? I'm personally very, I think your text I'd like to compliment, I don't think, but I don't mean that in a bad, I like that not limited to, being elevated to, because there's options in here which you've done. I have concern, and I'm going to only ask that through, about the deadline of March 26th. There's a lot of meat on this bone, and I want it to be something we can deliberate on rather than send back. So, I guess, first of all, who would be making the report? Who would be preparing the report? And what about the timeline? And then I want to make sure you get a chance to address that, because March 31st is something that you're probably interested in as well.
Sure. I guess the idea in my head was, I wasn't more specific, but Mr. Calder has been the one that's been involved with this project kind of from the beginning, as opposed to one of our departmental directors or leaders, and so I presume that that would be him that would be responsible for that. Addressing the second question, or second part of that, is I guess in regards to the short deadline, I just had some concerns after March 31st, but I think some of those concerns may have been alleviated from, if I think about the last presentation from TGO, it doesn't seem like the deliverance of our transportation model is going to change immediately after March 31st or anything along those lines, so we probably have some flexibility. I just had some concerns regarding the operations, but if we have funding and life goes on with TGO as it is right now, sort of the status quo, providing the services they do, then I don't have any problems extending that deadline for a more time for Mr. Calder to compose a more complete report.
Do you have a comment?
Through you to Councillor Adam, quite correct about the timeline. The world won't end on March 31st. We had a meeting today, in fact, where we talked about how the program will continue regardless of that deadline, meaning there's funds available for another month and a half beyond that. Plus, we are waiting also for the gas tax component from the government that we have been approved for. They just haven't made a payment yet. So I'm not too concerned about day-to-day operations beyond March 31st in the short term. So I would prefer to have probably closer to mid-April for a report, and I'm looking at April 23rd, actually. For the 26th, I would actually have to have the report in by Friday or Monday at the latest, which is less than a week. And I think this could be a complex report, depending on, how in-depth we go in terms of legal advice or anything like that. So I think it deems the necessary time to bring a proper report back. So I think along with Councillor Stevenson and myself, we could certainly get something to, as you know, Councillor Stevenson has been a member of the committee, so has certainly been there hearing the conversations about, they're concerned about what is their role as well after the 31st, because they are an advisory committee for the pilot. This goes beyond that, so we also have to address what their role is moving forward as well, which I think you've asked for options.
Councillor Stevenson, I don't want to forget my point. You go ahead. I'll just...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The comment I want to make is at the meeting today, I think they'll know a lot more by April 23rd than we can give more information then than we possibly could give on March 26th. A lot of things are going to happen between now and then, answers to where things are going to go long term. So I agree, but I do agree with the sentiment behind this, and I don't want to see this be forgotten, that I think that the community needs to be involved into April, May, June, and down the road, because it is our system, and it's working. They had more riders in February, the shortest month of the year, than they've ever had. So it is increasing. It's growing. So ridership. So it's a thing that's needed in the community, and it's being recognized more in the community as something that is needed. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Are you satisfied with April 23rd?
Right. Yeah, we're willing to change that, amend that.
Amend that. My questions then are about March 26th. Is that I addressed the comments. I'm just trying to see if there's anything we as a council would require, even if it's a very brief summary of authorization for the continuation of a committee, or kind of a summary of what's the maximum operational time frame for the current operations before funding runs out. I'm supportive of the councillor's notice of motion, which is now a motion, but I'm in lieu of the waiting till, which is I think is appropriate, that we want to have security in the fact that we're going to get to that time frame. Do those require direction, do you think, or?
No, I'm happy to provide an update as your CAO participating on that committee.
Okay.
And I can do something very sort of streamlined for the 26th to cover the suggestions you've made.
Okay. Now, further, Councillor Adam, please.
Sorry, Mayor. So just in regards to the motion, we've changed the date to April 23rd, and then we're striking out the last part of the first paragraph that references the March 31st deadline.
That's fine. Okay. 2018 or 2019? Sorry.
All right. Thank you.
Council, I'll read it, but I think the understanding is that the staff, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, thank you, that a staff report be prepared for the council meeting of Monday, April the 23rd, regarding governance options for the CT pilot project steering committee, and that multiple options be presented to council, including but not limited to being elevated to official town status, becoming an advocacy committee, and creating a transportation board, and further that increased participation amongst community members and organizations be promoted and pursued in order to help support and guide the potential transformation of public transit in town. Just really the change of date and cleaning up one item. Further, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thanks, Councillor. Any other notice of motion to be brought forward of council this evening? Seeing none, There are no resolutions from closed session. Council did not meet as closed session this evening. Bylaws. Councillor Stevenson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Esseltine that bylaw 4178 to authorize the sewage system management agreement with the County of Oxford and bylaw 4179 to enter in an agreement with Her Majesty the Queen in Right of Ontario for the Enabling Accessibility Fund, EAF, be read for a first, second, and third and final reading, and that the mayor and the clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign the same and place the corporate seal thereunto. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Stevenson. Discussion from council on either one of those two bylaws. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. And the confirmation bylaw for this evening's meeting being the 12th of March. Councillor Stevenson, please.
This is another bylaw. Sorry.
I hope so.
Oh, sorry, you're right. I thought it had to have the date on it. Nope. Or time on it. Nope. Okay, sorry, my mistake. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Esseltine, the bylaw of 4180 to confirm the proceedings of the council meeting of March 12, 2018 be read for a first, second, third, and final reading, and that the mayor and the clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign the same and place the corporate seal thereunto. Thank you.
Were you trying to stretch this out? Are you in the pool or something? Council, you've heard the resolution discussion. All those in favor? Opposed? That resolution is carried. Thanks very much, Council. Are there any items of public interest that you'd like to discuss? Mr. DeLeback, sir?
Through the mayor and to the general members of public, in absence of the fire chief,
Thank you.
I did change the batteries in my smoke alarms yesterday, and I would encourage you to do the same in your CO2 detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors.
So if you're watching this broadcast an hour late or early, as we sprung forward, it's a great reminder to change the batteries in all your warning devices in your home, being your smoke detectors and your carbon monoxide detectors as well. Thank you very much, Mr. DeLeback. Councillor Rosehart, please.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Hayes, please.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just had a question I was going to ask when we did the renewal of the sewage system. I read here where the Oxford County Public Health is merging with the Elgin Board, and I just wondered, is that going to have any effect on our way of doing business, where we deal with St. Thomas or Woodstock, or how's this going to change?
The operational aspects of the merger have yet to be entirely finalized. The last county council meeting, there was a transition board assembled, and it's ultimately should see no reduction in the level of service. I would think that in post-transition, I would encourage that we're going to be more closely geographically aligned for enhanced care here in Tillsonburg. But I think it's St. Thomas, Elgin, and Oxford that share a very common thread as far as their population, as far as their their demographics, and ultimately there was a real threat of meaning forced amalgamation for a public health board, in essence the size of our current LHIN, and so in lieu of being mandated by the province and the Ministry of Health and Long-Term Care into in essence, an entire southwestern Ontario, read London into that public health unit, that Elgin, St. Thomas, and Oxford are able to align themselves together and hopefully learn from each other best practices and provide continued valuable service to those needing it.
Okay, thank you. I guess, when I read that, I think back how the school boards, how that's all changed in the last few years, and
I think it was direct. One of the key things was in a direct approach to avoid that as much as possible, because there's text and direction from the ministry that a forced LHINs, just like the CCACs have now been that large, and of course the LHINs have, that Public Board of Health, you would have seen one Board of Health across the entire. The only other, another successful proactive merger, and I'm going to say Simcoe Gray somewhere up in that area, but please don't hold me to that. This was kind of the model that was being used after.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Esseltine, please.
Just with regard then to Councillor Hayes' question, so are there still public health employees working out of Woodstock, or everyone will work out of the St. Thomas?
There's no definition of change in location at all right now.
Okay.
No, I wouldn't see, I mean, now I'm offering some personal conjecture. The real operational savings are going to be at the most senior levels. I mean, one CAO, one medical officer of health, that type of thing. You're still, the investment in the hands-on people that are providing frontline public health care. And I mean, the questions I've asked are, how do we take the advantages here and invest more into mental health? How do we get more access and more talent and knowledge into working with our youth at risk and things of that nature? That's not necessarily the responsibility of a lower tier, but these are actually excellent questions, because we need to be the ones guiding and making recommendations up to the county and their new partnership. There was a portion of this that had to do with actually, again, had to do with the provincial government and the ministry regarding the appointment of a medical officer of health in Oxford, and the tenure of which one could actually, have that, they were going to lose MOH. And then the pending retirement. It was like one of those things that the world was aligning, and why not look at this? And it's moved along fairly well. I think May 1st is the projected operational aspect, and we'll be able to share more information with that as it goes along. I know there was probably a paragraph in one of the mayor's reports, and we'll make sure that we share more of that as we go along. Further, Councillor Hayes?
No, that's it.
Councillor isn't here, so we'll ask the CAO.
Nothing, thank you, Mayor.
Cutting the pay grade there. Mr. Rushton, sir?
Just to let you know that in my absence for the next few weeks, Janelle will be here to give you an update for the fourth quarter of last year, as well as the directors, and they will have the information at that time that we were. Basically, I'll give you the quick preview that we do have a surplus for last year.
Councillor Stevenson, please.
Just wanted to wish everybody a safe March break and a very happy St. Patrick's Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Esseltine, please.
Nothing, thank you.
Councillor Adam, please.
Nothing this evening. Thank you, Mayor.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, nothing.
Madam Deputy Clerk, do you have any comment this evening? And congratulations on your recognition again earlier this evening. That's excellent. As we conclude this evening, I would just bring to the attention and thanks Mr. Jalibak, the issue of batteries in your smoke and CO is not taken light. Please don't take that lightly. That's serious things, and it's already proven to be either it's important, and I thank you for that. And as far as March break, what we would like to do is remind those, thank the Lions Club at Tillsonburg, from 9 till 10:30 every day this week. There's free skates at the arena, free skating at the arena, as opposed to free skates. On Thursday, March the 15th, from 2 to 3:30, MPP Ernie Hardeman is also sponsoring a free skate, and public swimming is available at the regular fees throughout the course of the reading week. Is there anything else to be brought before council this evening? Councillor Rosehart, you have a resolution to adjourn, please.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Hayes, that council, the meeting of Monday, March 12th, 2018 be adjourned at 7:13.
Thank you very much. We'll call the resolution to adjourn. All those in favor? Opposed? Resolution is carried. And we will reconvene on the Monday, March 24th at 6 PM. 26th, excuse me. Monday, March 26th, 2018 at 6 PM. Good night.